In today's episode of HR Visionaries, we speak to Galia. We talk about the incredibly important topic, however, very often ignored topic of how to have difficult conversations. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, where we unlock the secrets of modern HR. I'm Benjamin, your host. Join us as we shed light on today's HR universe with HR leaders and innovators from across the globe. Whether you're an HR pro, a business leader, or just curious about the future of work, this is your shortcut to the forefront of HR innovation. Brought to you by Hire, the AI talent attraction platform. Welcome to the latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm very much looking forward to my guest today, Galia. It's great to have you on.
Nice to be here. I'm very excited.
Galia, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you?
Yeah. So I'm an HR professional for the last 20 something years, and also a certified trainer from a CTI institution, and people lover who likes to work with people, to develop people. And for me, HR is a calling, not just a profession or a job. It's who I am. So I'm very honored to be in the HR visionary arena that you are hosting. So thank you for that.
No, it's very, very cool to have you. And you just mentioned you like to develop people. What do you find so interesting in developing people, working with people, coach people?
Yeah. So when I started my career, I worked in the recruiting arena, and specifically in a field that I think today is less popular, but it used to be very popular, of what we called assessment centers, where you see a person for a day and then you write a report indicating what his professionalism is and how well he would fit a company. And I found that to be very intriguing in the beginning, but later on, I found that that was not enough for me because I only saw people one day and then I didn't know what happened with them. And being in HR, one of the things that is mostly fulfilling is to see someone join, for example, as a student, and then becoming a professional, and then becoming a team lead and a group lead and a director and a VP. And to see all that and be part of this journey is really exciting, because a company can give you compensation and benefits and what may you, but at the end of the day, the things that really fulfill you is developing your skills and looking back and seeing how much you have grown. And one thing I remember starting to work for a company, I think on my first day, this person came in. I didn't know the people yet. And he said, I've been here 3 years, and I'm leaving tomorrow. And I said, okay. Again, I was just coming in. It was my first day. And he said, as I came here, this is how I am leaving today. I got nothing. And I remember I thought to myself, okay, this would be the worst feedback in the world that an HR could get from an employee. It's awful. And I thought to myself, okay, 3 years from now, I swear to myself that no employee in my company is going to say that after 3 years he gained nothing. And when I was telling that story in one of our company meetings, someone came in and said, nobody can say that he left this company without getting things, and you are one of the leading people that was invested in the development. So for me, again, the best thing that a person can tell me is not that I made sure that he got the right promotion, but that I have developed and influenced his life and made him a better professional, a better leader, a better person. For me, that's the best HR outcome that I could hope for. So.
How did you react when he said this? So for me, it sounds completely awful, and probably something like, okay, well, I might consider leaving as well.
Yeah, I was Yeah, exit interviews tend to be very tense, especially if a person is not leaving in good terms. But I asked why he felt that way, and I saw that there were some issues there. And again, being on my first day and his last day, there wasn't too much to speak about or to initiate. But then I remember one of the things that I used to focus on in all the surveys that we used to conduct was always on that part. There are a million questions about how much you like and proud of and engagement and so on and on. For me, the development part, how much a company has provided you with development opportunity, was the most important thing. And one of the things I am mostly proud of is that in the company I've worked for, which is Corning Corporate, that I owe a lot to, who have been a major part of my development as an employee and a supervisor and a manager. One of the things I'm mostly proud of is that together with a colleague, we created a plan for people who were technical leaders. So, not supervisors, not project leaders or managers, but technical leaders. And they were essential to the company, but nobody had the right development plan for them, as it wasn't the classical supervisor and how to give feedback and identity and so on, and it wasn't the classical project management, planning, controlling, etc. And it was a challenge to understand what is needed for their development, and a fascinating job was to find out what are the key success factors for being a successful technical leader, and then creating a whole learning plan aimed to make them better. And yeah, that's one of the things I'm mostly proud of.
Well, making people better and that they feel they gained more than just a salary. That's also very well philosophical question, right? So to why is that important? Things have changed over the last few years quite significantly in terms of the contribution of a single employee being very significant. So therefore, this feeling, I gained more than just a salary is incredibly important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's what we're in for, because at the end of the day, I think HR is there to make sure that people are attracted, developed, and maintained. But I think the more fascinating work is around development. There's nothing more rewarding than seeing people grow and exceed their expectation, the company expectations, doing things that are outside their comfort zone. Um, yeah. And I think a great company is a company that allows that for their employees, and that's what keeps people. And all the surveys are quite coherent about that.
Well, what I find incredibly interesting in developing people is to find out, not just what they think they can do, but what they actually can do. So, enabling people to grow, and I think some people organically have this kind of drive. Other people totally underestimate what they are able to do. And when you give them the opportunity to grow, give them the opportunity to, think outside the box,
Totally.
it's amazing what they can achieve.
That's totally true. And one of the things that I think is most powerful with developing people is mentoring. And I think talking about what people feel they can or cannot do, that reminded me of the gender difference between men and women. So when I was one of the team leaders of a mentoring program for females, we were looking for mentors, both men and women, and we published that we're looking for mentors, and we got a lot more men than women proposing themselves. And I was not so surprised, because literature said that women are more reliant to being asked to mentor or be a mentee. And so I reached out to all the women that didn't apply, and I said, would you be willing to be a mentor? Because I believe that being a mentor is as developing as being mentored. So I think both sides earn so much from this relationship. And 99% of the women that I reached out to said, oh, yes, I'm so honored that you have reached out to me. And yes, of course, I would be happy to be a mentor. And so I was thinking about it, that sometimes this development opportunity comes also from inner confidence. And as an organization, we need to make sure that everybody feels that confident. And some people need more encouragement than others. But of course, they were just as good, if not better, than their men colleagues. But, you just made me remember that. So I wanted to share.
It's a super interesting story. So, well, and that's, I think, one of the key learnings probably of our podcast. So, how can we encourage and enable different groups to participate in growth opportunities, for lack of a better word? So how can we identify those groups, and how can we then encourage those groups?
Yeah. I think it starts with awareness. I think that the belief that whoever sees themselves capable would raise their hand is not always showing to be the right attitude, because sometimes that is the problem, that people do not raise their hands. And I can tell you that looking, for example, at senior management courses, so when we did the meta-analysis of the men versus women, we saw that more men were being registered by their leaders for managerial courses. And when looking into the data and asking, so why did that happen? So not surprisingly, the men asked to be enrolled and the women didn't. And one of the, I think, successful interventions was that each leader was asked to revisit the list and make sure that the representation of the women in leadership courses is the same as it is in his team. And following that, we saw much more women enrolled into these courses. So I think as an organization, when dealing with diversity and inclusion, sometimes you need to put your attention, and they say that what you put your attention on grows. So once you are aware, and once you're making sure and not just leaving it to coincidence or whoever asks. And there is a famous joke about this guy that goes to heaven, and he turns to God and he says to him, so many times I've asked you about winning the lottery. Like, almost every day I looked into the sky and I said, why aren't you not letting me win the lottery? And then God says, you never filled the form. And that that is sometimes true, because you can't reach things that you didn't fill the form for. But sometimes if we look into the interim between the filling the form, sometimes you need someone to tap on your shoulder and say, you're the right person, fill in the form. And as a leader, I think that is one of our missions, not to only see the ones who are vocal. So if it's recognition, if it's development, if it's all the things that you can do for a person, I think that's one of the leaders' roles.
Well, and when talking about development, I think one always has in mind like these well, great situations where you think about, well, how can I grow to the next level? How can I advance? However, occasionally, or well, actually quite often, it's not just like, hey, you're doing incredibly well in XYZ, but there is also something, well, you actually need to improve because you're not doing very well in that area. And I think those conversations can also be quite difficult, right? So when you need to tell someone, hey, it's not about, well, being from excellent to double excellent, but it's going from underperforming towards stepping up.
Yeah. These are the most difficult conversation, because it's always easier to tell a person you're doing so well and here we promoted you and
Exactly,
here.
right?
Yeah, and looking into the gaps is always very challenging. And I think that even if we have the criteria, there's always this room for the subjective or translation of what does that mean. But I think that if we don't talk about these gaps, then we are creating more damage than to talk about the gaps and anticipate that there would be some disappointment. And yeah, these are conversations that are always a bit, let's say, difficult for both the supervisor and the employee, because pointing out what you're not good at or what you're not yet good at is a challenging one. But I think that true leaders need to speak about it, because when you don't speak about it, so the employee gets the message that, okay, I wasn't promoted, enough time has passed, I didn't get any feedback why I wasn't promoted, so I guess I cannot have my next step in the career in this company. I will go to a different company. And one of the most frustrating HR situation is when an employee comes to you and says, I'm going to a different company, maybe a competitor's company, and they're going to pay me X more percentage and going to give me a team lead position. And you say, yeah, but we were going to do that. And well, nobody told him that, and nobody talked about a timeline or about what needs to change. And in that sense, one of the greatest powers, I think, in development is the feeling of progress. So even if you don't get the promotion right now, if you are in a process of getting better, getting the courses, working on your gaps, then you are in a path that leads you either to your next position here or to a next position in a different company. But meanwhile, feeling that you're being developed make you stay. So I think these difficult conversations are better to be held between the manager and the employee versus in the cafeteria between an employee and an employee talking about how this company doesn't promote. And you always look at someone else and say, how did they promote him, and it's politics and it's unfair and so on. And it's hard to explain because there's always the data privacy. You can't explain to everybody why you chose to do this and not that. But I think that's not the issue. You need to explain to every employee his own path and not talk about why you did promote his colleague, but rather what he needs to do to be the ready person to be promoted in the next session. And I have to say that the companies I worked for did, I think, quite a good job doing that. And you could see that on the retention, the voluntary retention
So
data.
proactive. So being
Proactive.
proactive
Yes.
is the key.
Yes. Yes. And
Um,
going into these difficult conversations and sometimes just saying, this is what you are. For example, sometimes people say, well, I am much more than you can see. And that may be true, but we can't promote based on something that hasn't been seen. So okay, let's make this into a plan and not just a bunch of talking in the air. What projects could you join where we can see you? What more can you take upon yourself? Where can you have the opportunity to shine? And once you're in that path, then I think you're in the right way of letting people develop themselves. And I'm sure you're familiar with the 70-20-10 model. And the 70 is super important. You have to give people the experience so that they can develop. It's not enough that you go to all these courses, but never actually do things, execute on them. So.
well, maybe we can take one step back, Galia. Given I think it, of course, then starts with okay. There is some kind of difficult conversation will be or is necessary. And I think many people then try to push this conversation as well to the future as much as possible. However, well, everyone of course knows, okay, well, there is some point in time where I definitely need to have this conversation. How can you encourage yourself, so to say, to have this conversation and then also prepare for this conversation?
Right. So first of all, I think that as an organization, as you create a process where it's not up to each supervisor to think whether he wants to, able to, finds time to have this conversation, but rather have it as a process like you do with performance reviews and so on. So that is something that has a lot of value, especially for those supervisors who are shying from that. So that's the first thing, is just do it. Have this conversation. Lame as it is, it's better than not having it. Then when you do have it, I think many times we try to avoid the emotions. We try to avoid this awkward feeling of saying, yeah, I see that you are frustrated, or I am frustrated that I cannot provide you with more opportunity at this certain time. But I think as a leader, when I was younger in my career, I thought that being professional means not showing your feelings, being always very reserved and holding on because you are the supervisor. But as I grow up or get old, any term you would like to use, I see that emotions are my power. And when I say that, I'm frustrated or that I'm happy, and I share my true feeling, that creates, I think, the bonding and the real conversation that is transparent and not just trying to be okay, because transparency can sometimes be hurtful. When you tell someone, for example, you are not being proactive enough, you're not stepping up enough, and this person tells you, well, I come to work every day. Well, coming to work is not stepping up. So let's talk about what stepping up means, and how does it look, and how does it feel, and let's give examples. And again, this is a conversation that, as you said, you need to prepare for. And part of the preparation is making sure that you have enough examples, not just one incident, but a bunch of incident. For example, I had an employee who was super smart and very capable, but very silent in the meetings. Now, I knew that he was paying attention because every time we turned to him and asked him, he always had the answer, and he had very smart things to say. And when I talked to him, I said, I can't keep telling people how smart and capable you are, and you keep being silent until you are asked a direct question. I need you to step in. And even if you feel that it's a little bit awkward, I need people to hear you, because this is the way to be promoted and to show your wisdom, your ideas, your inspiration, your innovation, all these things that I know that you have, because they are vivid in our one-on-ones, but they're not there in the team meetings. And he thought about it and he said, you're right. And I saw him struggling sometimes to, say something, although he want. And in time, people said things like, wow, we didn't know that he was so smart, so capable. And I said, well, I knew that, but I couldn't tell you. You needed to see for yourself, and he needed to step out to show how great he was, and he did. So this transparency, while it's not an easy conversation to have, I think if you go with the right mindset, which is a growth mindset, I'm not telling you something just to make you feel bad. I'm making you better. I'm giving you constructive feedback that will make you a better professional, a better leader. And I think when you go with that attitude, people usually listen. And I saw people raising from very junior positions to very senior ones. And for me, it was a great pleasure to think that I had a little something to do with this.
Well, I must say, I always found those those discussions super rewarding, where you provided someone with feedback that was not necessarily good, but was very constructive and helped them in the end. And the same for me. So when I received feedback that was sometimes not very not very positive, but very constructive, and you had like clear angles to work on. That I think is incredibly powerful. So I remember one situation when I provide someone with feedback after some time, and I told them, well, you're a great guy, but you appear very arrogant in particular situations. And well, now that I know you, you are absolutely not that person that, well, I saw in you. And I'm honestly pretty confident to say, well, many people see this person in you. I would change this. And well, he told me several times over the years, and we have become close friends. Well, that was an incredibly good feedback, incredibly powerful, and nobody had told him before. And he was like, okay, I probably have missed some opportunities because I appeared as this, well, as a very arrogant person, and nobody did dare to tell me, nobody did bother to tell me, and you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And well, obviously, going into a conversation like, as seriously, you appear very arrogant occasionally. It's not great, right? Because you're like, okay, maybe I hurt his feelings. Maybe he will go back like, okay, no, I don't go with that. I don't accept this. So it's a very unpleasant conversation. However, I think it's fair to say it changed the life then.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the great qualities that a leader could have is to make sure that he makes his people shine and look better in the eyes of others. And I have another story that I can remember with another employee that I had, and she had this incident with a colleague, and she was very upset about it. And she wrote this very long, very emotional, not to say accusing email to be sent to that colleague, talking about the situation and what happened and what she felt and what should have been done. And she showed it to me. And I thought it was very good that she showed it to me, because I think that if she would have sent it as is, that was the end of their relationship. And I said to her, while I understand your feelings, I think that your strategy is not going to get you where you want to get. You want to create better relationship, but what you're doing is you're accusing, you're prosecuting, you are being very negative, and you're doing this in an email which can be forwarded to other people, and the damage that can be created is much better than the benefit. And I suggest that you relook at the messages and that you have a phone conversation, because I think when you have something very hard and emotional and you were hurt, putting it in an email, especially when it's still burning, is usually not a good idea. And sometimes, when another person sees it and that person was not in the room, so I was not upset because I was not in the situation, I could see what she couldn't see. And I think if she would have waited a day and looked at her email, she wouldn't have sent it. And she really didn't. She had the conversation and she said, I'm happy I didn't send it. So yeah, I think that part of the learning is being able to give feedback about, okay, this is how you should conduct your relationship. And I think one of the things that I learned about onboarding new employees is that in the beginning, you have to be that person between them and the organization, not because you don't trust them, but because you want to make sure that they come across as the best version of themselves. And then once they are, and they can be free to do things and succeed on their own. But yeah, these feedbacks are super critical, and I have to say that getting them from my supervisors was always very helpful, especially when you start to work with different cultures. And it's not the same when you hear people from different cultures, the way they speak, the way they present things. And I had to learn that cultural sensitivity. And I'm happy that I had such a generous supervisors that were kind enough to let me know how I sound and help me get better at that. So,
Galia, one question is so regarding in particular emotions.
yeah.
So I for myself can definitely say that when I read an email or have a conversation that really triggers me. The best thing I've so far come up with is like, in particular when it's a conversation, not to get, too much carried away, but more like, okay, maybe thanks for your comments. I'll think about it and let me come back. Or when it's about an email, it's of course great that, you read the email, you type an answer, and just before sending, I normally pause and like, okay, maybe I should send it in 1 or 2 hours when I'm less frustrated.
Yes. Yes.
So
Even
that's
even one good night's sleep before, things look different in the morning. I had a supervisor that always used to say, I need to sleep on it. And I was like, okay, why? And within years, I learned that there's a lot of wisdom. Things really look different on the next day. But when I hear the music coming from an email that indicates that someone is upset, I would pick up the phone or Teams, and I want to see the face, because sometimes people get upset about things. And when you talk to them and when you ask them, I mean, again, that's something that comes with age. I would come to a person and say, I have the feeling that I've done something that upset you. I'm not even sure that I know what that was, but let's talk about it. You are important to me. The relationship between us is important to me. And you would be amazed how that simple, very straightforward, can create magic, because sometimes that's what people want. They want to be heard. They want someone to understand their frustration. And many times it's not even about you. I mean, he's frustrated from the budget, from the timeline, whatever. And maybe it is you, but even if it is, it's better to be transparent than to, go and then have these inner conversations with yourself that only get you more upset and more upset and more upset. And I found that, just confronting and saying, if I done something I need to apologize for, then let's talk about it, and I'll apologize, and then we can move on. So people are surprised, but then, okay, they let you know what was the thing. So I think people are always very brave on the emails with, putting red fonts or capital letters. And that also, as I learned, culturally, sometimes sounds more intimidating in some cultures than in others. So
indeed.
lucky for us, today we have ChatGPT. We can ask all the questions. How would I write to an Asian person, or someone from a country I've never been to? And how does it sound? And make it more polite, make it more appreciative, whatever. So
Very
I
true.
think that's one of the good things that AI has to offer us. And I do use it, and makes me laugh sometimes, but it does inspire me to, yeah, to
Indeed.
do things differently. So
Cool. Well, Galia, thank you so much. Was very inspiring talking to you. Was super cool to learn about how to approach difficult conversations. Given I occasionally catch myself in the situation that I push a conversation towards another day that I should have today, and it is important to have it ASAP most of the time.
yes, after you have a good night's sleep and come as calm and relaxed, and yeah.
Lovely. Galia,
Good, it was a
thank you
pleasure.
so much. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
again. It was super cool
Okay.
talking to you.
Okay, thank you, and have a rest of a good day.
Thank you. And
Okay.
thank you all for listening in, and see you next time.